And stay safe. From KCRG TV9, this is First Alert Weather Now.
And good evening to the Thursday night edition of First Alert Weather Now. I'm meteorologist Corey Thompson here. We're going to give you a whole bunch of updates on your First Alert forecast, which does bring some changes over the next few days. The pretty consistent, if you want to use the word boring weather that we've seen so far this week, which has been really pleasant and nice to enjoy, does start to change. We all are also going to take a look at the chances of seeing the northern lights here in eastern Iowa tonight, as well as kind of a wrap up of what's going on with Hurricane Milton and what's left of it and the aftermath in Florida. But first, what you need to know as you step outside this evening should be a pretty decent one, and it is that chance for the northern lights that we are highlighting as your first alert for your nighttime hours. After dark, we got a pretty good shot at seeing it. Right now, the conditions are holding pretty steady in terms of the measurements that we have up in the upper atmosphere to let us know if this chance is there. And we have seen reports on social media of folks along the eastern portion of the United States that have already seen their sunset, seeing those even early in the evening, which is good news for us here. Now, after that, we do have a pretty warm day in line for our Friday, likely the warmest day of the week. And then next week, we could see some of the coldest temperatures we've seen so far this season. Our first frost or freeze is on the table as we head toward at least the early portion of it. Your satellite and radar view here in eastern Iowa, though, shows those clear skies. That's what you want if you want to do any sort of astronomical looking as we go toward the dark hours of the evening. And that's what's coming. It's all because the area of high pressure off to our southeast still influencing our weather just enough to give us those clearer skies. But off to our northwest, cold front will be approaching. It's going to take its time to get here, but we will see the effects of it first in the form of a few clouds late tonight. Your planner for the rest of the nighttime hours takes us down into the low to mid 50s. That's the warmest low that we've had so far this week, and it'll set up that warm day again as we look ahead toward next week, or rather tomorrow, as we sort of get into that period of transition. Now, tonight, several organizations from Iowa are helping with recovery from Hurricane Milton. We are dealing with the aftermath of that, of course. It slammed the state overnight with winds reaching 180 miles per hour. We do have some video from Tampa. It looks like we may not, but it certainly caused plenty of damage. Unfortunately, several people have been reported as fatalities. Now, Governor Kim Reynolds says she is deploying the Iowa National Guard to Florida to help with the response to Milton. The Guard has been in the Carolinas to survey damage from Hurricane Helene earlier this month, and ABC's Jacqueline Lee takes a look at the damage in Florida.
A rescue and the recovery effort after Hurricane Milton tore through much of Florida. Crews in water up to their waists and using boats to find people who need help.
But I'm just glad we're out and to safety. And to where we can charge up our phones because I don't have any power because of my family is probably wondering where I'm at.
The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office sharing this video as two deputies helped a teen boy wading through floodwater. The Category 3 hurricane made landfall Wednesday night, more than 3 million people without power. In St. Pete, a massive crane collapsing onto a building. Part of the roof of Tropicana Field, home of the Tampa Bay Rays, ripped off. From above, you can see debris littering the field. Christy Austin lives right next door.
It sounded like waves hitting our windows. I got rain up to practically my knees in my apartment. It just sounded like the ocean was hitting the windows and the water was just pouring through.
These images from Bradenton Beach, just north of Siesta Key, showing a home off its foundation. This area also hit hard by Helene. From the air, you can see the damage. Some homes obliterated. The roof caved in at this grocery store in Palm Beach County. There were also tornadoes before the hurricane even made landfall. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says Milton spared Florida the worst case scenario.
Doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot of damage. Doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot we're going to have to contend with. But just in terms of what we were prepped for, I think that we probably have an abundance of resources.
Vice President Harris and I have been in constant contact with the state and local officials. We're offering everything they need.
Meteorologists say Milton is the third hurricane to make landfall in Florida this year, tying the record for the most in a single season. Jacqueline Lee, ABC News, St. Petersburg.
And here is a live look at St. Petersburg. If you look as sun is setting, of course, damage near the airport there in St. Petersburg. You can see some debris, some little damage to some of those outbuildings on the airport itself. This comes from folks down along the coast there, and it's just one of many pictures that we're going to see over the coming days as folks recover from the second hurricane to strike the coast of Florida on the Gulf side within just the past couple of weeks. Now, Tropical Storm Milton is officially a post-tropical storm. You can see it swirling here, the center of circulation actually here, and it transitioned from this tropical system, that compact circular shape, to something that's a little more like what we see here in the Midwest with those low pressure systems. We've got the swirl here and that low pressure system, but out in front of it, there's actually a bit of a cold front drawing in some shower and storm activity ahead of it, and a little bit of rain wrapping around too. And so that is a bit of a change. And so it's no longer a concern in terms of producing those tropical outcomes. Now in Florida, fortunately, live look at pinpoint Doppler radar shows just a few scattered showers along the east coast of the state. The west coast is looking clear of precipitation, which is great news because they saw plenty over the last 24 hours. This estimate doesn't encompass all of it because it was raining plenty heavy during the day on Wednesday. But the heaviest band did set up from right near Tampa, St. Petersburg, north of where the eye wall tracked as it moved across the state. And so those totals, as we pinpoint a little bit closer, ran along and just northwest of the Interstate 4 corridor, kind of as expected as the storm was coming inland, and they, on radar estimates, were easily approaching a foot of rain or more. Flash flooding was a big issue with the storm as it passed by. Some rain gauges reported 14, 15 inches of rain, which is a pretty ridiculous amount. As we pull out a wide view of the Atlantic basin, we do have a couple of named storms going on right now. Now, Milton, of course, National Hurricane Center has produced its last advisory on that as it continues to turn into just a regular storm system. Leslie out here, a strong tropical storm, but likely to weaken in the coming days and sort of curve back off to the northeast. Another area they're watching for potential development, a tropical wave coming off the west coast of Africa, could form into a tropical depression over the next 5 days, but it too would likely stay away from the United States. That's the good news there. Hopefully at least a period of quiet after what has been a very active October so far and late portion of September too. Now, here in eastern Iowa, we have been quiet for days and we look to stay at least somewhat quiet into the weekend. Here's First Alert Chief Meteorologist Joe Winters with today's forecast for fun.
We've had quiet weather and it's going to change as we head into the weekend with some cooler conditions, but still it looks good for any fun activities that you have planned across eastern Iowa. So here's a look at your forecast for fun. Fall foliage report. Once again, it's in northern Iowa that may see some peak colors this weekend or into next week. We want to see those pictures. Please submit those through the UNews app on the First Alert weather app at kcrg.com. Peak colors in northeast Iowa cannot be beat. Biking forecast as we head through the weekend. We're going to have to deal with some wind on Sunday. If you want to go out, Friday's the warmest, but Saturday's wind's not bad, but they will be a different direction out of the north and east. That pumpkin patch forecast remains unchanged. A beautiful Thursday, Friday, Saturday, though, temperatures will become more fall-like. It'll feel like that Saturday and Sunday as well. Maybe a good weekend to go out. Our Friday Night Lights game of the week forecast also remains unchanged. It looks good. 75 at kickoff, 68 in the fourth quarter. 7 o'clock on KCRG 9.2, Decorah in Marion. Harvest Festival in Center Point is Saturday. Some northeast breezes with us at 74. Enjoy some face painting, inflatables. That's 10 a.m. to 2 over in Center Point. And of course, we do have the historic haunted tours going on in downtown Waterloo. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, various times. 65 on Sunday as we cool it down, giving a little more haunted feeling. And there's a look at your Saturday college football kickoffs. It looks good whether home or away for all of our college teams. That once again is our forecast for fun.
Now, your First Alert forecast with meteorologist Corey Thompson.
I hate to step on meteorologist Joe Winters' toes here with a look at the beyond the weather forecast for tonight, but the chance for the northern lights is one of the better ones we've seen. We've had a handful of opportunities over the past several months, and tonight's looks pretty good, at least as of right now as we speak, just past 6:30. It's not dark enough yet in eastern Iowa, but after the sun sets, especially as we get past like an hour past sunset, start to look to the northern sky. From the horizon, pretty much all the way up to directly overhead has the potential for seeing some of this. Get away from city lights. You don't want city lights around you because that can make it harder to see just in general, and you don't want them to your north either if you can avoid it, because that can also take away from what you see. Give time for your eyes to adjust as well. Immediately you may start to see a little bit of some shimmering light, but you may not see much color with your naked eye. And if you want to bring out some of those colors, try using a camera. Those long exposures with a traditional camera or perhaps just your cell phone on night mode can really pull out some of those bright colors and really make them pop. So over the next several hours, notice how we have good conditions to start off the evening, and as we go through the rest of the night, clouds will stay off to our north, and that's the good news. It's not till later tonight where a few of those clouds begin to encroach our northern zones, likely already having experienced at least some of those northern lights between then and now. Now, our Decorah City Cam shows a picture of those clear skies. Right now, winds are light too. Temperatures around the upper 60s to as warm as the upper 70s, still in 78 in Waterloo. Winds on the south, currently about 5 to 10 miles per hour at most. Your first alert highlights nothing in terms of a major weather impact over the next 24 hours. Now, it will be a bit breezier tomorrow, but not strong enough that we're highlighting it here in terms of it being particularly disruptive. But we will notice that increase compared to the fairly calm days we've had for the middle of the week. That southerly wind is what's going to help keep us warm tomorrow, too. It's all ahead of a cold front in an area of low pressure, which is off in southern Canada. This front trailing behind it will be a pretty significant change as we look ahead over the next couple of days. But it doesn't arrive until later. So your first alert forecast overnight involves temperatures in the upper 40s in some of those river valleys like Manchester and Maquoketa, and then Iowa City staying and hanging on to 54 degrees, 53 in Charles City. This is the warmest low of the week so far, and that will lead to the warmest day so far this week too. And Pinpoint Futurecast otherwise shows those clear skies sticking with us. Southerly wind staying light overnight, but after we get past daybreak tomorrow, we'll notice it start to pick up. It will be a little bit breezy, and we'll keep those partly cloudy skies with us too, but they will be at the mid and high levels like we've seen off to the northwest today. So we will still see a fair amount of sunshine coming through as well. Now, as this cold front moves through, winds will begin to shift. You may notice a little bit of a pickup in those during the evening hours, starting to bring in that cooler air. So if you're headed to those Friday night football games, be ready for that change. But it's the scattered cloud cover that lasts with us on Friday night into Saturday before we start to see even cooler air arrive later in the weekend. Now, your first alert forecast for tomorrow, 81 in Decorah where that front arrives first, but to the south, 87 in Iowa City and Washington. That's more than 20 degrees above normal for this time of year. And when that front moves by, no precipitation expected. Now, we do have some smoke in the upper atmosphere right now. That could add a little extra milky appearance to the sky as we go over the next few days as wildfires in the northwestern United States stick with us. But the bigger change will be the temperatures down into the 60s by the time we get towards Sunday for highs on a pretty blustery day. We're expecting northwest winds to be pretty strong there. And then early next week is when we reach our coldest. Late next week, look ahead to that. Next Saturday is our next best chance of some rain or storms, but we gotta wait at least a little while. Now, we have had dry weather lately, and it has been good for farmers trying to harvest their crops. KCRG TV9's Jim Mertens spoke with Iowa's Agriculture Secretary, says that weather has been beneficial, but starting to have an impact in other ways. It's this week's Grower's Guide.
What an interesting spell we've been in, 4 years essentially of at least having some D1 drought somewhere in the state of Iowa. 4 years. And then we came into this spring and, we essentially had in some parts of the state up where I'm from in Northwest Iowa, there were parts of the state that essentially had a whole growing season worth of precipitation that fell in a matter of a few weeks. And, we saw the consequences of that. So, and then it's true, that I would, a bunch of caveats here, right? There was variability is the word that I'm using most this year for the growing season because Northwest Iowa certainly had too much water for a lot of the growing season. Much of the state had just enough and they're looking really, really good. And then there are places that frankly didn't have quite enough precipitation and everything in between. But it is true that pretty much across the state, as we ended the growing season, things dried out. And we may have taken some of that top end yield off because of the loss of moisture. And then September now ranks as either the driest or one of the driest in the history of the records that we have in the state of Iowa. And October largely has been dry again. So, and the 10-day forecast is showing sunny skies and temperatures that are warm, which creates a great window to go harvest. But I would have to tell you that you'd probably be hard pressed to find somebody that wouldn't say, gee, I'd take a half an inch of rain and knock some dust down, take some of this fire hazard, risk away. And it's dry enough that we probably really wouldn't sit that long from a harvest standpoint. So we're dry. We do need some moisture here during the fall.
And what is the impact then? I mean, I think farmers know full well is that once the harvest is in, they want to see some saturation of the soil that would get down into the subsoil in order to have a good planting season next spring.
Absolutely. You are absolutely thinking about recharge into next year. We were so dry coming into this spring that we needed every bit of that. That rain that fell was a blessing really because you did not have subsoil subsurface moisture building up there. So our soil moisture is really, we're deficient there. And you don't really want that to come all at once. So you can't soak it all in. And what you need is that kind of nice, I always say I'm one of the only people probably in the state of Iowa that's hoping for snow during the winter, because we do need precipitation in nearly any form that we can get it, as long as it soaks in, right? As long as it's not running off. So absolutely, if we have a dry fall and that just leads us into shortages in the spring, it's absolutely a concern. But don't forget too about things like, we're planting nearly 4 million acres of cover crops. And in order to get those cover crops up and going and get the maximum benefit from those, we need a little moisture to get that germination going. There are, all of our beef producers and dairy producers and folks that graze and hay and, need pastures and water sources for livestock really throughout the fall, and then as quickly as they can in the spring. Those become stress points for them as well, and hardships that they drive up their costs. And so it's not always just the crop people, it's the livestock folks that are really struggling with the dryness as well.
And the latest drought monitor was released this morning. And of course, as you might expect, with no rain falling, it has gotten a little bit worse. Last week, moderate drought appeared across portions of eastern Iowa. It has expanded across more of the area, including Charles City, Cedar Rapids, down toward Iowa City, including the key city of Dubuque as well. A severe drought area has now cropped up here in our northern zones, just near the Fayette area south of Decorah, another one out in western Iowa too. Not the entire state included in abnormally dry conditions. A small sliver of south central Iowa not there thanks to some rain they got. However, most of us are. So that is a situation that has been getting worse, as you just heard from our ag secretary, and not much relief in the near future. Temperatures will fall thanks to that cold front, from 86 on Friday to 65 on Sunday. Remember, be ready for those blustery conditions. Northwest winds 20 to 30 miles per hour. Some of those gusts on Sunday could actually exceed 30 miles per hour, making for a quite windy day indeed. There's that push of those winds starting early Sunday morning. So by the time you wake up, if you have plans to go to church or other activities early in the day, you will be encountering those. Now, later in the 9-day, we will see temperatures bounce back, but it's not after some potential frosty conditions during early next week. In fact, Tuesday is our best shot, perhaps, as lows get down toward the freezing mark. Our average first freeze dates, in most cases, will have already been passed by then. Iowa City would be the closest. So it's actually not that unusual to see those types of conditions this time of year. But it is a bit unusual to see so many 70s. We're going to see more as we head toward the tail end of next week, even closer to 80 degrees again next Friday. Showers and storms again appear to be a possibility by the time we get toward next Saturday. A little storm system will be moving through with a cold front that brings us what could be a pretty decent shot. We'll have to keep an eye on it. So of course, 9 days from now, and we'll bring you the latest as we know it. And thank you for joining us tonight on this edition of KCRG's First Alert Weather Now. We will be back again to close out the week at the same time, same place. Have a great night.